Yes.
Welcome to Big Conversations by Ordinary People.
Thank you, Kenneth, for having me.
Yeah, I say lucky guest. Well, depends on how things go for us. You're one of the first guests. You're the first guest to be hosted in our studio on the first day. So if things don't go well, just know you're the cast guy.
No, that shouldn't be the case.
Yeah, so you have all that.
It's actually a blessing.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. And maybe actually this is the best time to thank Bamlinde. Hillary has been giving us free way to use Bellwether for recording most of our podcasts. We just didn't bother to thank him from Bellwether because conflict of interest. We didn't want people to think he's paying rather there's any kind of advertisement going on. So since we are moving, I think maybe we should holler at him.
Yeah. Hillary has been a very good mentor of streets. I've not met him physically, but you can tell.
True.
From everything that he does, he's a good man. So
true. Or he's vying for political office.
I don't think so.
That could people start like that. Segirinya started like that.
I actually saw a tweet where he has made it very clear he's not into politics.
People change their minds. They'll come back competing with Bobby Wine and tell us, you know what, I saw things and I changed my mind. No, I'm kidding. That's just started to warm things up. So you're in finance, basically.
Yeah, I'm in finance.
First tell me exactly what you're doing.
I did BCom at uni. I did BCom from Mark Keron University with a major in accounting and finance. So apparently I am working for an organization called Teso Education Fund. It's helping young people in the core 16 districts of Teso to access formal education. That is from secondary, senior 5, 6, then vocational training, then the university. We offer scholarships fully paid, plus of course a stipend.
Yeah. And these scholarships are sort of based on your tribe?
Yeah, basically based on tribe, because we're trying to uplift people back home, and that is the whole objective.
So why not Buganda? Since I'm in Uganda, I would want to qualify for these things. Why didn't you guys choose Buganda?
Actually, maybe from a broader perspective, we are looking at a way how we can be able to leverage the connections around the people in Teso, so that we can be able to help to tap the potential, so that these young people can be able to realize that education is the only way out. Because in this part of the world, Uganda, we do not have the intellectual capacity to make it in anything big. Tech, we have failed.
Also, first, what do you mean we don't have the intellectual capacity?
By intellectual capacity,
sounds like an insult.
We can be very bright, but we do not have the capacity to take on our innovations to the next step. Everything, the structures here, do not support that.
Yeah, try to be a little bit more specific. What exactly is stopping? What would be one of the innovations you want to take on that, and what would be that specific thing that would stop you?
Personally, I'm looking at the education space. We want to see how we can have a system that can be able to make people have an education at a standard that is required, but without having so much hassle. And that innovation is very hard to take it on from here.
You give me an example where something like that is working. I know, for example...
We've looked at Harvard. Harvard has a system that is just a benchmark. Just a system. I know of someone that has done their degree here and they've never been to the US. That is the whole essence.
And they're doing their Harvard degree from here?
From here.
Okay.
They don't have to go to the US.
Okay. And here you're making the assumption that Harvard education is actually a good education.
Every education is good education.
Okay.
But what I'm trying to give you is the element of technology. We need to leverage technology.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Now I'm following.
Yes.
Yeah.
You've seen Mark Keron University here. What the second biggest in Africa? Students are home.
Yeah, I think second biggest is a big stretch.
Any technology, and that is going to create a very big gap, which we are already seeing. The young generation is home 2 years now down the road. You can't tell Mark Keron can't be able to come up with an innovation. Yeah.
So. As a person who has been to MOOC doing software engineering at the age where innovation was still a buzzword, I was at MOOC. I think when I joined MOOC, Steve Jobs was still alive. So, people were, every word innovation. Okay, I think he was still alive. Every word, every sentence you make and end with innovation. You sounded smarter. So people kept using the word over and over. But the thing I know about the problems, especially we have like in Uganda, like things you're raising about education and other similar problems, the solutions are not innovative. They don't have to be innovative in any way. Most of these problems can be solved by just copying stuff China is doing, by just copying stuff Finland is doing, for example, and just, pasting some of them, and maybe sending a bunch of our experts to train within these systems, yeah? And the thing that is blocking, right? Personally, I think it's intentional. I think it's part of the political master plan to sort of keep the population, in this state, especially intellectually, because otherwise an intellectually benevolent, a state that is intellectually capable is hard to rule, and we still have our chaos with the politics. Yeah, so that's what I think. When people come up with things like innovation, for example, things they term as innovations, for example, as solutions. Let's say, for example, in the education sector, right? If what you're saying is we are going to buy computers and put in a room and let students come and study Harvard courses from there, there is nothing innovative about that, right? It's just sort of like, do you have the resources and the capacity to scale this, right? And I'm wondering whether this is where you want to take the conversation, or you want to talk about innovation in itself.
Actually, you've put it right, because one of our strategic plan is to set up a very big center in the East, where we have every computer, the internet, so that these young people can be able to use this resource center to make sure that they learn and take their skills to a very big level.
So yeah, so you're saying in Teso, what you're trying to do is provide basic access to computer resources.
Yeah, internet, because really those people don't know how to use the internet. We are going to make sure that we have these resources at hand, so that we have the right experts to make sure that these young people get this knowledge based on the internet and the computers, so that they can leverage their skill going forward.
I see. Do you know why the connection, say in Moroto, internet connection, or even GSM connection, is not as good as the connection in Kampala?
I don't think I have the perfect answer to that.
So yeah, the reason is MTN makes more money investing resources in Kampala than it does in Moroto, right? And that's because the population itself, this small dot in Uganda, that Kampala alone has more than 2 million people. I think we're more than 2 million people who frequent the place, in a day, right? So MTN would invest at a mass, say Kampala's mass, the land mass, the square mileage. MTN is willing to raise more mass, right, per square mile, rather than in way more mass rather than Moroto, because in Moroto, even if they invested in that equivalent amount of infrastructure, they would not make that money back in reasonable time. It's not a good investment, right?
That's true.
Yeah,
That's
and
true.
part of this is the same problem with Teso, right? And when people talk about internet, and I'm not trying to discourage you, I'm just sort of telling you I see things going. When people keep saying, internet, say, is the alternative to education now, because of COVID, people can't sit in class, and people talk about internet as the alternative. For me, it doesn't make a lot of sense, because we do not have the infrastructure, and that infrastructure is expensive. Recently, I don't know which minister, but again, one of those guys who's looking to eat someone's money, was proposing that we put, the government should spend, I think, about 6 billion putting internet within national parks. I don't know the reason, again, most of the tweets I read were about jokes. People were saying maybe the lions need to track the antelopes so they don't have to run too much. Again, most of it was just making jokes, but the reason that is not there, again, the government doesn't invest in internet infrastructure. We have UTL, but, it has been going downhill since I remember that word. Companies that come and invest in this infrastructure come from a capitalist perspective, This is me putting money today, so in the future, I get more money out, basically, right?
I think, Mark, Kenneth, maybe just to bring you up to speed, TEF is an organization with structures.
I see.
Structures. It was actually basically formed in the UK by good-willing people staying in the UK, the Teso. So we are trying to bring it down here to Uganda, TEF UK. And then we also have the people called the Atekere in Kenya. So we are trying to bring all those groups together. Internet is just a smaller part of the bigger problem.
True.
You get?
Yeah.
So what we're trying to say, let these people, we are trying to make sure that we use whatsoever networks we have to make sure that this stream becomes a reality in Teso.
I see.
Yes,
And how else are you
disparity.
looking about this? Sorry, I interrupted you. My question is, how else are you looking about, how else are you looking to approach this other than the internet? And you can first finish your thought before you answer that.
Yeah, as I said, there's a big disparity in education sector. That's why you see schools in Central are way too high in performance compared to the ones in Sorority, in Teso as a region. You know why? Because better infrastructure in Kampala, as you have said.
I agree. Yeah.
So we as TEF, we are trying to make sure that we are talking to donors. We are talking to telcos, the big telcos, to see how can we make this a reality? How can you invest in education in Teso? But it becomes a very tough quest because all these telcos are looking at the end product. Are you bringing in the money to us?
Yeah, you bring
so that
subscribers.
is the essence. That is the difficult conversation we're trying to tackle. Okay.
And have you guys figured out a good way around?
Conversations are going on with different stakeholders.
Okay.
Yes, and at the end of the day, I'm very optimistic we will have something to work with.
I see. And what is the because I'm also trying to understand, and I've worked with say UNICEF. You know, I've worked with an NGO as well, but I've worked with sort of UNICEF, and I've gone out a little bit to see how like the implementing partners kind of lobby for their communities and stuff like that. But I'm just very curious because from what I know, again, you know, most of these conversations go down to where is the money coming from, right? The biggest donors in the world, you know, if you look at, they call themselves philanthropists.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, that's sort of, I think, the rank beyond donor. Those biggest people, when you look at them, most of them, again, are using their organizations for power. You know, if you look at, for example, what Bill Gates was doing, right, with Bill Gates and his clique of rich people, trying to give away a lot of their money. Everyone thought, you know, these guys have good hearts and now they're feeling guilty about all the money that they've taken and they want to give it back. But, you know, what the pandemic at least has exposed is what they get in return is this huge amount of power to call big shots, right? For example, I think Bill Gates was one of the people who was lobbying who was stopping universities from open sourcing the vaccine. And, you know, he had that kind of power. And I think, you know, his reasons, again, you can, depending on how your sort of philosophy on life is, you can say he's right or you can say he's wrong. But the fact that he had that kind of power to actually stop, you know, there is no open source vaccine today, even in the middle of the pandemic, right? And this is because people like them have that kind of power. And that is what they've been buying. What we thought was donating out of sort of the heart was them buying power, you know, they're sort of purchasing power with hard cash, right?
Yeah.
And what happens with what you're saying in Teso is, you know, you have to position the community in that kind of scope. You know, you have to be very wary of how the rest of the world runs, yeah? And you have to position the community in that kind of scope where, say, if a donor is coming, you know, what are they getting in return? You know, it can't be smiles of people. And this I know for sure. I know, for example, in UNICEF, they invested a lot of money in so-called stories, you know, collecting those testimonials because that is where the money came from. You know, if we went to a community and the guy told us, oh, you know, we didn't have a borehole, now we have a borehole, and we took very fancy people, and they would hire these American photographers, you know, 10,000 a week to come and take a picture of a guy who doesn't have lunch for tomorrow because they built for him a borehole, right? And this was important. That investment was important because these are the pictures that the guys who fund UNICEF look at to see if UNICEF is a worthy investment for them, right? And again, you know, everyone has their own natural interests, right? So I'm trying to understand from like the Teso perspective, right? Apart from, again, a goodwill, yeah, and it has, you know, some sectarian effect, you know, why targeting like a specific tribe. Apart from all that, what is the value add for someone who'd like, first of all, to donate or to invest directly? You know, if you wanted MTN, for example, to come and put mass and all that, you know, what is the value add for them?
First of all, Kenneth, the truth of the matter is, in life, every relationship is a transaction.
Yeah, true.
Give me, I take. What do I have to get back?
I agree.
And I totally agree with that fact. And that is what has shaped relationships world over. For the case of Teso, we have a model that we're working with apparently, where the goodwill from Teso particularly first are making a donation towards the organization. And we have decided to come up with that model because we need to own it. This is a community thing. It's not for personal interest. We need to own that organization based on its ideals. Say, for example, every district, the 16 districts of Teso, maybe you are taking 5 people per district on a scholarship. What benefit do we get from there? Like now, if we bring MTN on board, we are going to tell MTN, this is just a benchmark. MTN, please come and set up infrastructure, ICT infrastructure in Teso. What do you get in return? Wider coverage, wider base. A condition. Because fundraising are conditional clauses embedded inside the fundraising paper that we do not talk about.
Yeah.
Most investors, most philanthropists, there is a fundraising clause that, yes, Kenneth, I'm investing in Big Conversations with people, but 10% of your sales on YouTube come back to me.
True. Yeah.
Yes, and that is something I may not be able to because it's not ethical for the organization. How we get the money should not actually be into the public eye. Though it's a transparent organization.
I see.
Yes.
I see. Okay, so no, that's true, and I think I also don't want you to step deeper than where it's up. But here's the thing also, like maybe some of the things you can talk about, in terms of impact so far. How long has this organization existed?
This organization has actually been in existence for 1 year.
I see. Okay, that's
made a tremendous effect.
Yeah, that's pretty
Due to COVID-19, a lot of things have actually been put on hold. But so far, we've made a tremendous effort to make sure that the 9 students are sponsored. And those students are all from Teso. And this is a Teso organization exclusively. Yeah, that is the impact.
So that's the other question also is, what happens to non-Teso people living in the Teso area?
Actually, the model that has been gotten is basically on ideals of ethnicity, age, and where did you attend your education from. You get?
Yeah.
If you're from Teso and a certain age, can you be able to take on this opportunity? What we do is we put up notices on district notice boards through the cows and tell them that please advertise the scholarships. We want 5 people from your district to come and compete for these scholarships. Yes. I see.
Okay, so the other thing is the complexity of the region generally, right? So part of Tesos live in Uganda, some of them don't, right?
Yeah.
The other thing also is, if you look at, say, Tororo, right? Tororo has Tesos
and the
Japadolas, right? But these people, because now they're in this they're within these geographical demarcations, these political regions the political region called Uganda, they end up going to the same school. Say, for example, TC, right? If these guys are going to TC, and then you say, we are going to sponsor, say, we're not going to look for the best, it's not a merit-based institution. We're not looking for the best student in TC to earn a scholarship, but we are looking for the best Teso student in TC. This student could be the 30th out of 100 in class, right? How does that... How do you anticipate this sort of...
how we get the people to take up the scholarships?
No. How, in terms of the, because it's discriminative, right? If you're cherry picking for Itesots, in a region that has Itesots, is it the right word to use Itesots, by the way? People use it, I don't know if it's the right word to use. Okay. So if you're cherry picking Itesots from, say, Tororo, a place that has gaps, I don't know if gaps is the right word to use for Japadolas. Yeah. My bad days for Japadolas, I call them gaps, but we'll cut that out if it's not.
It's
but okay. So if a place has Japadolas and it has its resorts and they go to the same school, TC is Teso College or Toro College? Toro College, right? And they go to Toro College, and I know they do taekwondo in Toro College, but they're from there. So they go to Toro College, right? The best guy is a Japadola. right? The 30th guy is a Teso guy, right? But the best guy doesn't have access to scholarship to do his, say, A level, right? After Form 4, even if he's the best on merit, right? But the 30th guy has access to
the scholarship.
To the scholarship just because of a certain tribe, Don't you think that, again, this is sort of bringing back those secretarian...
Yeah. Actually, once this thing, when we formed the thing, we looked at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And we took all into consideration whatever you're raising here, Kenneth. But maybe let me just take you through the process.
Please, yeah.
Once the people that are actually taken for the scholarship are purely Tesos. Once you're an Teso and you studied in Teso, you can be an Teso studying in Kampala, and you're in need of a scholarship, but you will not qualify for it because you did not study at home. It's not about discrimination. It's trying to uplift the standards of living of these children back at home, because we believe that most of them actually generalized as maybe inadequate, but we want to bring a sense of feeling to them by offering these scholarships. Your question, TC, a person in TC can have, a job can be number 1, and an Teso can be number 30, but the job who is number 1 and is in need of a scholarship cannot take. That's where you're taken back to the constitution of the organization. Okay. All this is surrounded about Teso, but it's nothing to do with discrimination.
I mean, what you just described is the definition of discrimination.
Actually, we have Buganda scholarships that are taking place in Uganda.
I'm in Uganda, but I'm not saying it's a good thing. That's what I'm saying is, again...
It's not... Okay, look at this from this perspective, Kenneth.
Yeah.
We are 2 gentlemen.
Yes.
We have come up with an idea.
Yes.
And we are trying to be very inclusive.
Yes.
But we cannot take the idea throughout the country. That is the fact. You're a founder. I know you have a business. You know you own a part of a business.
Yeah.
And what you have to do is narrow down your interests to a niche. And that is what TEF has done.
I see. Yeah. No, so first of all,
I've had actually people say, oh, don't you think this is discriminatory?
Yeah.
But it's not.
So here's why, again, I insist, right? Same thing. Okay, let's use Buganda again. I don't want to put you in. And I want to talk about this.
Yeah, let's not talk about regions. But I think the whole point is, what is the impact?
Okay.
What is the impact of this whole organization? As I've told you, from the grassroots, we are trying to make sure that these young people take on bigger responsibilities. And actually, once we sponsor students, we have to make sure that they subscribe to the organization. They pay it forward in the future.
I see.
Yes, that is the model. We are trying to get resources from within Teso. It's nothing to do with a tribe or anything, but these are just Teso that have stepped up and mean well for the region. That is the whole point.
I see. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So again, we're going to move on from this. But so here's the thing, right? I don't think your ethnicity, right?
Yeah.
Is in any way a good attribute to be selected for anything. Yeah. Apart from in places say South Africa, right, where a specific ethnicity was intentionally subjugated. But say the US, for example, yeah. But in a country like Uganda, where on average, right, maybe take the Baganda out, right, because Baganda, I think they made the deal with the white man. But in a country like Uganda, right, where on average the gap has had the same opportunities as the Teso, right? If you try to establish an institution, that is going to cherry pick people according to these random ethnicities, because again, for where we are right now, right, we do not subscribe to I'm a Muganda because my father is a Muganda. This is not anything. It's just that I don't have any say in this, right? Apart from I can change my name and pretend that I'm not. But these are stories that are deeper than sort of me myself, right? If you try to create organizations that sort of provide these specific awards based on those ethnicities, right? And again, there's a very similar conversation around the land thing that's going on in Parliament, right? Yeah. There's a very similar conversation. What makes this different? What makes this conversation basically different is your organization is intentionally being sectarian, right? By sort of cherry picking intersots, from a region that has multiple people. That border has, I think it has Bellwether, it has, I don't know if they're actually there, but it has a significant amount of ethnicities there, right? And if you say your qualification is supposed to be this tribe, then a lot of people who would have qualified do not end up not qualifying because of an attribute that they have no say of, And for me, I feel like that's unfair, but again...
Kenneth, in our strategic plan, in our 5-year strategic plan, we have something embedded inside it that for the start, we are working with that. Then we move to Teso in other districts, staying in other districts. Because for now, you must be an Tesot studying in a Teso school, and to be admitted, you'll be admitted in a Teso school. You get. But it's in phases. As I told you, this is a young organization. I see. Okay. And there's a lot of stuff that is going to happen going forward. But for now, this is what we are working with. It's not about discrimination or secretarial policies. I see. Okay. So let's talk about finance a little bit, right? Yeah. And I just want to understand what version of finance you fall in. Are you in accounting? Are you? Yeah, I did a major in accounting.
In accounting, yes. Okay. And you have, are you certified?
I am in the process of getting certified. I'm doing my SSC. Okay. I'm in level 2.
I see. Yeah. And so for an organization like this, what does this mean? I know people say Ugandan politicians are corrupt. Yeah?
Yeah, that's true.
But the cream of corrupt people, the Olympics, what's the name of that Ethiopian guy?
The guy that won.
Yeah, the guy that won. Ugandan people, Kisa, the politicians, they set the pace. Yeah? But the real corrupt people, the the guys who actually win the Olympics of corruption are the people who work in NGOs.
Yeah.
Those guys are corrupt.
That is
corrupt at the core. Yeah. And where this corruption starts from is accounting. So most of NGOs that raise money from big donors, because the donors don't have the ability to come and monitor in real life what kind of work is going on, they rely on, say, books of account, right? And other forms of documentation and, again, testimonials and, say, schools, say, for example, what you guys are doing is sending people to school, right? I know, I'm not going to, but I have a friend who used to work in an NGO that did something like that. It was, I don't know if it was an NGO, it was a church thing. It was, I think it was an NGO, yeah, but it was funded by the evangelicals, and they would send kids to church, to school. Yeah, but when these American preachers were coming, this guy would mobilize a bunch of kids a week before, train them about how to claim that they're getting a scholarship, pay them this and that, and maybe talk to their parents and give them food for a week. And these guys would the actually think they're donating. And this is just very small anecdote, but this, the corruption in NGOs is obscene.
Yeah, it's top-notch corruption, but most of the NGOs now are largely funded by donors, actually have a donor representative working in the country to fast-track progress and how funds are being used. So that, and also there are some rules that the donor can give to the NGO. Without these rules, without you complying to the rules, you cannot be able to get any more finance from the donor. And that is what is happening. And that is actually trying to reduce corruption. And systems in the NGOs, I don't know about other NGOs, but top NGOs have working systems.
Yeah. So again, I know systems.
Yes.
Right? I know systems. Let me tell you, the person I think is the most corrupt in this country. Okay, I don't know, maybe they'll ban our podcast.
I think what you're trying to... there's... NGOs have cartels within the organization.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the thing is, that guy you're saying, the guy who is the representative, that guy is corruptible, right? Yeah, because again, the structure... the structure of NGOs is you raise money from other donors. Yeah, those donors are not giving you money out of their pocket. They're not giving you their salary. Those donors are raising money from other bigger organizations, and most of those organizations are raising money from other bigger organizations, which maybe get money from say government, say things like USAID, or they raise money individually from people, send a check over, those small things, right? But then it sort of trickles down to you, right? And at all those stages, because even these guys at the top, everyone is stealing something. Everyone is stealing something, or maybe laundering money. Some of those NGOs, maybe the ones that actually laundering money probably are not stealing any money because they are trying to clean their money, right? But going down the road, everyone is trying to claim to be doing good, but while doing some bank at the same time, putting some money in the account, right? And I just want to understand, what are those systems you are trying to describe? What kind of systems? And I just hope you can use layman's terms.
Yeah, I'll try to be very specific so that everyone can be able to understand. Actually, I'll give a typical example of where I work. We get the money, we have an approval level.
Mm-hmm.
Like someone in finance cannot be a signatory to the check.
What you check? The check that's received.
Yes, any money, bank, in case you want to cash in or cash out, anybody in finance does not have that
authority. The power to sign on.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
We have a line of authority.
Yeah.
We requisition funds, and there's an assigning authority. That is the whole process. Going forward, actually, most organizations, most NGOs are trying to tackle the vice of corruption. You've seen government coming into the affairs of NGOs lately. The NGO board has been suspended. I don't know if it has come back to work, but most of these NGOs actually launder money.
Yeah,
and that is a fact.
Yeah.
And that is the fact. That's why there's a little bit of government interference at the moment. They want you to declare your sources of income. Where is this money coming from?
Yeah.
Can you show us your audited books of accounts?
Yeah.
Does it equate to the amount of money that is being disbursed?
Yeah.
If there is no such money, where is the other balance? That's where we get entangled. But the vice of corruption is a very big one. For the case of Uganda, we still have a very long way to go.
Yeah.
In fighting that vice.
I see. So for me personally, I have no problem with a thief laundering money by building a school, right? I think that is the best way to steal money, right? What I have a problem with is fundraising, stealing money that has been fundraised, right? Is it fundraising or fundraised? Stealing money that has been collected from a form of fundraising, where, for example, Buganda recently, a few years back, was doing the TOEFL thing, right? If at some point I sort of anticipated, or I thought that, somewhere within those accounts, someone was stealing something to build something, I would be extremely...
You've heard of creative accounting?
Yeah, creative accounting and all that. But what I'm saying is, what are those systems that NGOs are putting together to be more transparent? Because we know, for example, again, accounting hasn't changed a lot. There's no innovation. I did accounting in Form 5, remember, the 2 double entry bookkeeping, and I don't think much has changed since then. Yeah. So my what I think is people now who are real experts who have, like you do it from school, you go to university, you do it. You're now doing a certification course, doing the same thing. You definitely have seen loopholes which you can play with. And again, I've read a lot about people who call in auditors to specifically show them where they're going to catch them, not to audit their to audit their books technically, but tell them, so this is catchable, this is catchable, this is catchable. Clean here, right? So in NGOs, I don't think accounting specifically is the right way to sort of run away from corruption, but a general system.
Okay, fast forward, most NGOs right now, they appoint their own auditing firms.
Mm-hmm.
If a donor is giving you maybe $1 million, what they do, they appoint their
own audit
firm, and they take on the audit.
Mm-hmm.
People with no interest in the firm.
Yeah.
But again, as you said, everyone is corruptible. So it's actually working with something that is very comfortable for the donor. That is the only way out. Because apparently, I know of NGOs that are still struggling with licenses that have been revoked due to these claims, laundering, corruption, all that stuff. But the system, for me personally, as a finance person, I think the most important thing is coming up with internal controls at the onset. An internal control, you can say like, you, Kenneth, you're the finance director. You do not have any authority to go to the bank or to go to anywhere where cash is involved. All you have to do is monitor what is being disbursed and monitor what is being brought in. You get. And the second one, an internal audit system, an internal audit function should be brought into NGO. Most of the NGOs don't have internal audits. All they do is wait for the year to end. They call an accounting firm, please make the audits. But with an internal audit system in place, we can be able to mitigate the risk that comes with losing a lot of money. Because at the end of the day, you're supposed to report the internal audit system. These guys give quarterly reports, monthly reports that can help management going forward. Management reports such that NGOs, donors are able to come into play. They actually come into play in a way that once the audit reports are being given quarterly from the internal function, they can know that this is the amount of money that is going into this activity. Say, for example, you have operations in 10 districts of Uganda. Weekly audits can help you as an investor into the organization to know that this is the amount of money left and this is what. And actually, what organizations are not getting it right is fast-tracking progress. Fast-tracking progress is a very big problem. I'm talking this from a point of experience because I've been in the system and I know exactly what is happening.
Yeah.
Once we don't fast-track progress, you find that everything comes into play. Corruption, cartels come into the organization because they know no one is watching. But when there are extra eyes in the organization, we can always manage. You cannot do away with it completely, but we can always try to minimize the risk.
I see. So maybe the other question then would be the expense, right? For example, if you have $1 million to give out, right, but it's going to cost you $600,000 to donate, to sort of make that $1 million impactful, right? Because again, you need to hire
extra systems that
extra systems to make things work. Aren't you spending a significant amount of money? Aren't you wasting a lot of money that people who donate this money in the end think they're doing something for the poor person, right? But who ends up eating, say, 60% of that money is an accountant, a qualified accountant who would actually have got a job in MTN, auditing MTN books, right? Don't you think that there's some sort of inefficiency with this whole NGO system?
No. That's the problem. NGOs work with budgets. Budgets, and these budgets are usually annually. And before money is released, they scrutinize the budget, they see any budgetary lags, and they see if there is anything that should be included in the budget. Miscellaneous expenses like audit are actually given a cap in the budget. Such while once budgets are presented to the donor, scrutiny is taken into seriously, such that at the end of the day, we can see what are the main operational expenses that need to be prioritized. So that before money is released, we have a working position, we have a neutral position that we can be able to take on.
So I'm not doubting that there's planning. I'm saying, is this planned inefficiency? Basically, so here's the example, right? This is not an NGO, but it's almost going to be very similar. The Ministry of Health recently purchased trucks, double cabin trucks, right? For a significant amount of money, But they hadn't anticipated that part of that donation, whatever amount they had donated, at least 9 billion, was supposed to be for taxes. Exactly, And this is an expense. Okay, taxing maybe is not an expense per se, right? But again, a significant amount of that money still that purchased those cars was spent on clearing agents. A significant amount of that money was spent on transporting those cars. A significant amount of that money was spent on planning. The committees that actually sit down and plan for that money, they get paid off that same money, right? This is sort of, maybe the ministry actually has, no, but it doesn't. The ministry has people they pay a salary, Yeah. But when they have to sit a committee to do something, to draw up something, they say, for example, in this case, if it wasn't part of the national budget, they are going to get off that money that has been donated to sit the committee, give those committee people allowances, give them tablets, give them 200 million cars, so they can sit and plan for, say, 10 billion, right? And what I'm saying is, if these expenses, how do we plan to spend 10 billion, costs 5 billion, isn't it inefficient to have, the NGO structure basically and sort of non-profit organization structure? Isn't it inefficient to have all these organizations spend a lot more money paying professionals who are not actual beneficiaries of, the reasons why they are collecting this money, more than they're actually spending on the impact work?
I get the point where you're coming from. Maybe let me just highlight something you may pick interest in. Actually, the reason I brought up budgets is an internal control that checks expenditure. So, for the cases of NGOs, once the budget is being allocated and it has been approved, you cannot work outside that budget. And that is a fact. You've been in UNICEF.
Yeah.
If you requisition for maybe money, maybe you say, I need 1 million shillings to accommodation, stuff like that. But if it is outside the budget, you cannot. It is usually pushed to the next financial year.
I get that.
That is the whole essence. Like now for the case of the ministry, because I don't know, those guys are actually technocrats, but everyone is looking at what are they taking home.
So I get that. So let me just maybe clarify, and we still are going to move on from this. So to clarify, right? You have 10 million. You've collected 10 million from Chanja to build a borehole in Chivoga, right? The borehole costs, you've talked to the guys who are going to dig, the guys who are going to survey the land. Basically, all expenses are engineering expenses around building this borehole costs 5 million, right? But you need to collect 10 million because the other 5 million are going to pay for the collecting officer, the guy who's walking around Chanja looking for the money. Yeah, that job is important, right? The other 10 million are going to pay for the accounting officer, the guy who's going to look at how the money is being spent, right? These are all NGO employees. Yeah. The other amount is going to pay for his supervisor, the guy who makes sure that this guy doesn't mess up. Say you have multiple borehole projects, each say accounting officer, say 10 accounting officers have one supervisor. Some of that money will pay the supervisor. All this is in the budget, right? We know that this is our budget. 5 million will actually build a borehole. The other 5 million is going to pay salaries of our NGO employees, right? And my question is, don't you think this is inefficient because a significant amount of the money raised
is taken into experts?
Yes, exactly.
Actually, Kenneth, a cost-benefit analysis is always done to ascertain what costs go to project A, so that before allocation of funds in a budget is done, they will have done a cost budget analysis on maybe project A. Like as you said, boreholes A need like maybe manpower, 10 people, taking 1 million each, 10 million. How much money are we allocating in what? Getting the boreholes. Yes, we do a cost benefit analysis so that every information, every figure that is reflected in the budget is catered for.
It has value, basically.
Yes, it is. The
and I'm wondering whether is a lot of money, a lot of that value is spent in administration.
Administration?
Yeah, in terms of trying to manage how this money actually gets to the end user, to the beneficiary. And again, I'm saying this because I've seen...
Most of the money, as you've highlighted, most of the money is actually going into administration.
Yes.
That is true.
Don't you think that is inefficient?
It is. But again, for the projects, most of this money, actually being donor money, the donors are actually aware of these operations, that in order for us to work with these operations, actually operation expenses are the most highest in an organization.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not disagreeing.
It is not inefficient because this is a standard. If you want something to work, especially it's not a private entity.
Exactly. So
Yes.
I'm not disagreeing with that. And again, I'm going to show you why I think this is a problem, and we are going to brainstorm a solution, because I have a solution of a perfect NGO, but we'll talk about that last. So here is the thing, right? In MTN, and I don't know why I'm calling MTN a lot, but in a private organization, right? We know how much we are going to pay the secretary, how much you're going to pay the accountant, how much you're going to pay the surveyor, how much you're going to pay the supervisors, how much you're going to pay general manager, all that, right? And when we are setting the price of the product, if we are going to say, for example, Bicom, part of the other work we do is we rent out our equipment, right? And now we're going to start renting out part of our studio as well, right? But we know how much we pay the guys you're seeing in the crew, Dennis, for example. We know how much, say people like Mark would get, what their stake is, and all the other people we call to help us, for example. We know how much that costs us, right? When we are setting the price, when you come and say we will give you 2 mics for 2 hours for say 100,000, we've taken all that into consideration, right? And in the end, when we count our books, we know at the end of the month, if we get the target kind of people we're expecting to get, and we pay off other people as we've agreed, we are making a profit, right? And so for us, it is you who's paying for our mics, who's actually paying all these guys, It's not money coming from my pocket, right? And this is mostly what private companies do, right? And you're an accountant, so you know that, the whatever assets and, I don't know the accounting thing, but, one column has to be bigger than the other for it to be considered
must
profit.
be equal to the capital and the equity, and the liabilities. Yeah,
exactly. So in NGOs, the end user is not paying, right? The net impact would be if you raised $1 million, and you spent 900,000 actually on the beneficiary, right? If you raised $1 million, as say, first again, tell me the short form of your NGO. TEF. If TEF raised $1 million, right, and they spent 900,000 actually getting kids in school, 90% of that money that would be an efficient NGO, right? Yes. But if TEF raised $1 million and they spent 60% operating, paying for office space at TEF, paying you to look at the books, things like that, and then you spend 400,000 in scholarships, in direct beneficiary, in direct money that beneficiary is getting, that, in my opinion, would be inefficient.
That's why there's a very big difference between NGO accounting and government accounting and private accounting.
Yeah, please actually enlighten me on that. I did not know that. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Government accounting, there's what we call public sector accounting. Very different. For the NGO, you actually don't report assets and liabilities. We don't report that, because all NGOs do is spend.
Yes.
All NGOs do is spend. And actually, the significant influence a donor has can even be on the structure of the NGO. You can say, I want this structure because I know this is how my money will be well spent. That is the biggest difference. So, profit, that's why they actually call non-profit organizations.
Yeah.
Spend. The element of profit does not affect the NGO.
So I get that. I get that. I get that.
So, when you bring in an argument of efficiency and inefficiency, some of these things are beyond control for us, because the donor will say, "This is the structure I want. What do you care?" He's the one getting the money. That's why you see in a private firm, the man can say, "Avoid overhiring." You can say 2 people. You can juggle accounts. You can juggle operations and administration.
Yeah.
Me, I'll take care of the strategic objectives of the farm. That I hope you're getting the...
Yeah, I'm getting your thing. So now let me pitch to you my perfect NGO. Do you know Bitcoin?
Yeah, Bitcoin.
So you know the blockchain, basically.
Yeah, I know blockchain.
So blockchain is this transparent ledger, right? Where transparent and distributed, where all entries are open to everyone. Everyone basically can store a copy, and sort of all entries are kept in what they call a block, which makes a blockchain. And the longest block basically is sort of a statement of which is the truest block, right? So you have a blockchain, right? Where if I wanted to donate to a cause, right? If I wanted to donate, I can donate to, say, fighting HIV, right? There's a cause to donating HIV, to fighting HIV, right? There is an institution whose job is to fight HIV, right? It could be a hospital, yeah, where their job is to admit patients. It could be a pharmacy where their job is to distribute ARVs, right? It could be, an institution, say education, for example, yeah? There's an institution whose job is to provide education, right? It could be a school, it could be a university, it could be a training institute, it could be us, for example, if we got a few kids and try to teach them camera work and all that stuff, right? It could be us, right? And what you do is, we go to this open ledger and apply, right? And apply for a specific amount of money for a specific number of people. Say we want our tuition today for students who are paying, we charge them say 1 million per term, right? But we want to admit 30 students who can't afford to pay, from the village, right? And this is our criteria of selecting students. They have to be ITESOT, they have to be studying within ITESOT schools. Yeah, this is our criteria, right? And what we want to do is, it costs 1 million in tuition. It costs to transport the kid from, say, their home in the village to the school. It costs this much. Lunch and supper, the whole term costs this much. Lunch, supper, and breakfast costs this much. And maybe some small stipend for the kid to brag around, right? Costs this much. So if you give us 2.5 million per term, we are sure we spend 90% of all that money on the kid. So we will spend 10% for, again, a blockchain, most of the time, if they're smart contracts. So there's a thing called Ethereum, which is more suited for building something like this rather than Bitcoin. Yeah, if you run all this on a blockchain, it would cost, the transaction fees would be maybe 10 or 15%, right? But then we don't have an institution that is logged with humans who, we are not paying 80% of your money in salaries to professionals who can get job at profit-making companies, right? Don't you think that in your opinion, don't you think that would be a more efficient way to manage philanthropy?
It is, in my opinion, it is, because, of course, Bitcoin comes with challenges, but
blockchain, actually, I just wanted to give...
Blockchain, it comes with its own challenges, but at least at the bare minimum, I think it's the most efficient way to go forward. That's why you see most blockchain companies are actually pitching.
I see.
They're pitching, and they're trying to make sure that people adopt blockchain in the organizations. I've seen Jack of Twitter. Yeah. He's actually, you've seen his Excel schedule of the organization that he has actually paid using blockchain. He has given care, very many, and most of these organizations in Africa, he has dedicated 28% of Square, his personal investment to philanthropy.
I see.
And it's not in cash form.
I see. Yeah. So okay. Yeah. So again, yeah. So that's.
So that is the most efficient way, actually, to curb all these vices.
I see. So yeah, that there is one way of thinking of a blockchain.
But blockchain, for me, in our setting, could prove to be a very hard thing to implement.
So yeah, again, the thing is, if you want something that works well, it can't be easy to implement. That's if it was easy, someone would have done it, right? So that's one thing. But also, if you look at Bitcoin or crypto, as a form of blockchain, sort of money, speculating, buying things, that is tricky. That is probably one thing. But I'm talking about the technology behind blockchain, right? The transparency and the decentralization, right?
Actually, that is why it is actually being built. Those are its cores.
Yeah, exactly.
Transparency and decentralization, the ease of use, and also trying to make sure that the wider scope is being touched.
Yeah. And the key thing again about blockchain, and why I think I think I've been thinking about philanthropy a lot. What big organizations like, say, Bill and Melinda organization do again is, in return of raising this money, because again, which is a weird thing, Bill Gates has a lot of money, but Bill and Melinda Foundation, they don't spend only his money. He also does fundraising. Yeah. So in when they raise this money to do whatever they're doing, eliminate polio from the world, eliminate malaria and whatnot, what they have is, again, which is probably intentional or unintentional, the side effect of this is build these demagogues. I think that's the right American word, is to build these demagogues. You have Bill Gates, for example. Have you ever seen a bad article about Bill Gates anywhere?
It's hard to get.
It's pretty hard to get, apart from these conspiracy theory things, right?
Yeah.
So what you end up having is this guy who people are scared of saying bad things about because it affects the money. This is the same trick that the West uses on countries like Africa, right? They donate. So this is now 7 what is being by the way as well. So it's a carrot else stick method, right? So what the US will do is they'll set up USAID in Uganda, and what USAID does is to give you, what Americans feel is okay to give out, right? So they say from the American people, they give Uganda some money, yeah? But what that money comes with, the money itself comes conditionless. So they tell you, fight HIV, make sure you're transparent, make sure you're not corrupt, or, fight hunger, whatever the problem is, right? In Uganda, I think it's mostly HIV and
malaria.
Malaria, HIV, malaria, and
TB.
And women
And
birth,
women,
women giving birth, right? Those are all good causes. But what they do instead is the consequence of that is when Uganda is budgeting, when Kasaija is budgeting, he knows that USAID will take care of these things. So we don't include that in our budget. So part of the tax I pay is not to fight malaria, because a significant amount of that, the American people are doing it for me, right? The side effect is when, say, they tell Sevo that the boys in Somalia are becoming a nuisance, you need to send some Ugandans to go and risk their lives to die because, these guys are talking about Islam and our ideology is anti-Islam. What happens is, if Sevo says, you know what? Most of opposition leaders, what they're saying, Bobby Wine, if he became president, if he says, you know what, today I'm pulling out of Somalia, just like that, then all these consequences are going to come. First of all, malaria money will just disappear like that because USAID will have no interest in it. Will look for another country to give them malaria money and things like that. So, all in all, what the side effect of donations, this out of our heart kind of giving is, I give and I don't take, is they take in the long run by controlling you, right? But an ownershipless, and I think what makes, again, blockchain extremely sophisticated and sort of the best kind of technology for our time is ownershipless, a more anarchic, I don't know if it's a word, more anarchy-leaning form of organization where there is no actual leader, there is no actual owner, it's decentralized, it's consensus-based. What that helps is, if Bill Gates wanted to donate to malaria cause, he can do that anonymously on the blockchain, and people who are actually implementing solutions around malaria can apply for that money anonymously. They don't know who's donating it, they just know there's a bucket of money, no one is donating it, and then they can get, right? And then it's sort of, what makes them get is, everyone else would think, including Bill Gates would have, say, one vote to think that, I think that what that organization is doing is good for malaria. And if you get the consensus, if you get the majority of people to agree that what you're doing is good for malaria, you take the money, right?
Yeah.
Instead of, knowing that as a return for us having, less mothers die in hospitals, we have to send well-able men to go and die in Somalia, fighting American wars, for example, right? And sort of the cutoff. And okay, I mean, again, I'm not against America having interests. What I'm, and probably I share them, I think that, again, Islam militantism is quite terrible. Yeah. But the one I'm looking about this is perverting giving. Giving is supposed to be that human thing, the most human thing ever, a dog, unless it's satisfied, it would rarely take a piece of meat to another dog, right? Yeah, it will... Actually, if the other dog came near it would probably be a fight, right? It's us humans who, apart from, like your own brothers, strangers who, people in America would give to strangers they've never met in Africa because they feel like it's a good thing to do. It's a human thing to do. Yeah, but when you have all these organizations, including yours, say, following the normal NGO sort of structure where they pervert giving into an employment scheme, where, for example, the UN does almost, say UNICEF, not the UN, UNICEF and World Food Program. They do almost 90% of their work in Africa and other third world places that need their help, right? But they have a significant amount of their employees, more than 50%, from the West. They're top, if you look at the
Country
guys
director.
country director as well. Most of those people are from the West, maybe India and China, India, China, I don't know much about Japan, but most of those people are from the first world countries, right? So it just shows clearly that this is an employment scheme of, so the guy who runs UNICEF, or the lady who runs UNICEF, to know that, oh, I'm doing a good job. I'm not being given breadcrumbs, while the mother who is being helped to give birth because of UNICEF donation thinks she's being done a favor. Yet, even this lady is getting donation money, but she's claiming to be employed to earn it rather than being sort of a direct beneficiary. And if you look at the budgets, again, the inefficiency thing is the majority of the money is actually spent paying people like her, rather
expatriates.
Yeah, exactly, rather than paying the mother. So yeah,
actually, there are a lot of complexities that around the NGO world.
Totally agree.
Blockchain, NGO. Your suggestion is top notch. Like, it would actually work efficiently for the NGO world, but the NGO world is very complex.
I agree. I totally agree.
That's why you see, even in America, the people that are fighting blockchain.
Yeah.
People are saying, what is this? Because they know at the end of the day, money is going to be concentrated in a certain platform.
Yeah.
What happens to me? What happens to a billionaire like Bill Gates? Where is he going to put his money?
Exactly, yeah. True.
You get, there are a lot of questions around blockchain. But again, that doesn't take us far away from what the normal happenings in the NGO world. Expatriates are all over. And these expatriates are actually rented big apartments, big houses in Kororo,
Paying 10,000 in rent.
So it's a scheme. Take and give.
I see.
It's actually a transaction.
Yeah, I see.
And that is the basis of human relations.
I see.
Yeah.
So the other question, right? Are there non-Ugandans in the NGO where you work?
No, maybe donors. Yeah.
There are no employees.
Our country director is local. All the employees are local.
I see. Okay, so that's the question will be tricky then, because again, that's also one of the weird things that I felt in. And I remember once when I was still a very young man and very rebellious, I wrote about my experience at UNICEF, where at the time I left, I was the only Ugandan in the office. Was I? I think I was one of two. No, I think I was the only one. I don't remember clearly, but. And I was an engineer, right? Software engineer. I did. So I was in a department called Innovations Lab. But the tricky part is the guy who sat next to me, my boss, made more money than me, obviously, because it was my boss. But then we were two. So we were two. The guy who did this administration was also Ugandan, right? Yeah. So, but here's the thing: the guy, my boss, the guy who like hired me. Actually, not even my boss. My boss maybe was getting a lot of money. The least paid non-Ugandan in the office we sat in made more money than me, than that other guy, the sysadmin. The guy is Ugad, the Ugandan guy is Ugad, because those were police guys, were paid by police, so not a lot of money. The lady is clean, and literally every Ugandan in office, all their money combined. So if you got all our salaries in 1 month and added them, it was less than the least paid non-Ugandan.
Yeah.
In the office.
That's actually has been the norm across.
Yeah, and how does, for me, that makes me, and I know like part of why I decided to leave and, go and hustle, be poor, but live with dignity thing was that made me feel inferior. When you read about these stories of, say, slavery, when you read about apartheid in South Africa, or you read about sort of Martin Luther King's cause, you think of these things mostly as history, right? Or as far away. When you think of, say, for example, what Mandela stood for, say, I'm not making a deal. I'd rather die in prison, but I'm not making a deal with a white man unless South Africa is equal, right? If you look at Martin Luther King, I have a dream and, he gets killed and he says, I'm going to lead my movement, even if it's risky for my life, but I'm not living again in America where black people are sort of second citizens. Yeah. And, a lot of Gandhi, for example, in India as well, a lot of these things, when you read about them, they're very historical. It's very far away. It's very heroic people until you realize it's probably not very different from the society you're in, right? And, like, for example, when we're at UNICEF, that's sort of the feeling. You feel like, yeah, I mean, okay, maybe this guy is my boss and he makes slightly more money than me. Actually, the least paid guy wasn't my boss. So the other guy was different. Maybe this guy is, we're doing a different job. And yeah, but the fact that you're earning more money than all Ugandans in the Ugandan office combined, something is fundamentally wrong about this. There's something racist, about this. And yeah, again, I'm not.
It's about interests.
Yeah, true.
It's about interests. These donors have interests. Like for the case of, I'll give for your own case, UNICEF. There is an expatriate code. Most of these donors say that this is an expatriate. He's coming into your country. We have to take care of their living wage. We have to take care of their monthly wage. We have to make sure that they're catered for. This is a foreign land. That is in disguise. For me, in my own opinion, that is all disguise. But they're actually promoting capital flight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Which is a wrong thing.
So first explain capital flight.
Capital flight is you've seen most Indians making money here, the likes of maybe, I don't want to mention names, but you've seen many people making money in Uganda.
Yeah.
But the money is going back to their country.
Yeah, repatriating money back
to the country.
Yeah.
Do you know why? They don't have interest here. Their interest here is to make the money. They feel there's an opportunity to make huge billions of money in this country. That's why you see a man rents a big apartment in Uganda. He doesn't actually buy property.
Yeah.
He doesn't buy property. The man says, I am going to stay in Uganda for 10 years. And that is the bare minimum. When I leave Uganda, my money is in my country. Yeah. Yes. But that is what is happening in NGOs.
How is that? My dad used to work in Japan when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And he brought all his money back. How is that different from that? Most of the money was to pay school fees for me and for him to buy some land to put a farm on.
That's why I'm saying it's all about interests.
I see. Okay.
It's all about interests. Where you have an interest is where you put much of your energy. What are you going to do in Japan in the long run? Yeah. These are questions that you keep asking yourself. In the long run, you're coming back home in Uganda.
I see.
So where would you concentrate your investments in Japan? That is the same thing.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
But most of these countries have laws that are governing repatriation of money. Mm-hmm. I don't know for the case of Uganda. I do not know, to be honest.
I see. Yeah, okay. So the white versus black thing is also a very easy argument to make, right?
Yeah.
Because it's well documented and it's also very clear, white and black and white is sort of the clearest opposite that one can think about. But there's also the case of Ugandans, right? And this is where, again, I was emphasizing a lot on the ethnicity part of the organization, right? In Uganda today, and I think I read this, I don't know if it's Faizo who tweeted this. Yeah, and I don't know how true it is, right? That we know that only one region has benefited from the COVID crisis. It's only one, we know that money has been stolen, right? That is a public secret. Money has been stolen, and that Faizo's, I don't know if I want to blame him or something. The guy who tweeted that, his assumption was a lot of money has been made by people from the West, right? And I don't know how true that is, but again, my inclination would be that is right. That's why I'm bringing it up. I would be inclined to think that obviously there are some people from the North who have stolen some money. There are some people from Uganda who have stolen some money. There are some people from the East and everywhere.
Yeah.
But a significant amount are from the West, right? But part of the conversation in that tweet was, the weird thing is these people are not investing in the West. These people are buying properties in Buganda. They're building malls in Kampala. They're building stuff around sort of the greater Kampala. Yeah, the greater Kampala. And it's sort of the same conversation, right? So the people in the West, their reputation is getting tainted. Banyankole are corrupt. But the benefits actually done by few corrupt Banyankole, who, we know they're few, but they still big. Banyankole, they still are, UCB, just still real chunks of bonanza stuff. But the actual Banyankole who are getting their reputation tainted and, who are sort of, what's the word? It's prejudicial, right? People are now looking at them as the other tribe, right? Which happened again in Idi Amin's time and Obote's time, where, the Northerners were the other tribe and everyone else was Uganda.
It's just a cycle.
Yeah, it's a cycle. So what they say is, this is not fair. We are not eating the money. And in fact, we are not even, it's not like we're getting employed more, right? We still have people, youth in Mbarara who can't get employed unless they come to Kampala, right? Because this is where all the money is, right? The guys who are stealing money, they are still investing it in Kampala. And, isn't this sort of, isn't it like, you use the word cycle, but isn't this the innate, like, way we are going to keep living? Until, of course, someone brave comes up with an actual solution. Where, we have a few, I think this is something Jesus was saying, where we have a few people who acquire, but then they use these identities that sort of tie them to masses, right? So if Museveni calls himself a Mnyankole, for example, that makes you think of like the majority of the many Banyankole who know nothing about Museveni as in the same basket with Museveni, yet, they just have this identity. The same thing with, what your NGO is doing, right? With the tribe thing. It's, again, doesn't have to be a Mnyankole thing, even the Baganda, right? If you have, for example, what's the name of this guy, the Attorney General who went and said, who went and defended the state for what?
The current or the past?
The current one.
Chiwanuka.
KK. Yeah, KK went and defended the military court. So the Attorney General, who's supposed to be the lawyer of Ugandans, went and said the DC for the army, the martial court, which is, the DC for the army, which it is not a court, can actually convict people who didn't subscribe to the
I think kind of the biggest takeaway from me from all the dealings that are happening in this country is authority and control by the big
authoritarian.
Man. Yes. If you want authority and control, then you need leadership. But for you to actually get leadership, you need to bend to the powers they are in.
Oh, I see.
You see, KK is a very objective person.
Right. I don't know that.
In my opinion, but now that he's in the system, you have to bend to the powers.
He has to compromise.
Yes, you have to compromise.
Yeah.
But the biggest, if you think you want to take power, you must be able to challenge it. The biggest question should be, can he be able to challenge the power that is in authority now?
I see.
Okay, these are all political things.
I see. I don't disagree with you. My point though was, if KK identified as a Muganda, I'll be tainted as, and this has been around a lot. If you look at the history of Sevo's,
true.
Sort of the funny moves he has pulled, it has always been almost Baganda at, actually doing the dirty work for him, right? And that could taint me as well.
By association.
Yeah, by association, because again, my father was a Buganda, I didn't have any choice in that. By my association to Buganda, I could be tainted to this, right? And again, this is the same thing with white people, right? There are few white people who are racist. Yeah. Majority of white people are not. But whenever you look at a racist white person, he reminds you that, shit, white motherfuckers are racist. Even if all the white people you actually know in your life, they're not racist, right? I mean, maybe like some, there's that.
There's always an element of
there's
racism.
that sort of culture difference thing where the guy feels too sorry for you, all of this. There's always that thing.
Even nepotism, actually, even if it was you in power, Kenneth, you do everything in your favor to make sure you lift the person.
I don't believe that, by the way. I don't believe that.
It's the way we humans are.
There are two ways to look at this, right? Look at Russia. Yeah, okay. If you look at it from a historical perspective, look at Russia. Yeah, Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union, it comes into the chaos we had in '96, where people were stealing things. Guys are buying UCB at over how much money? People are stealing everything, all public property. Privatization has come as an ideology, and people are now stealing in the name of privatization. Right? This happened in Russia before it happened here. Right? Okay, not before, maybe at the same time. Yeah, but what happened in Russia when Putin went on was to make it a little bit legitimate so that people don't end up stealing so that the money doesn't go in spoils, because I think Russia had gone into, I've read that book, The Red Notice. So this is what I'm referring to a little bit. So Russia had, I think it had turned down a loan, or it had turned down, or the IMF had refused to give it a loan, one thing like that. And so, it was their market, the economy was dropping, their currency was inflating significantly. I think actually when IMF even gave them money, what the oligarchs did is they stole all the money and just decided to keep it out of Russia to safeguard it, right? And what Putin does when he comes into power is to make sure at least people can feel confident keeping money in Russia, because that was important for Russians to what? For Russian oil to be legitimate, right? Otherwise, if they dug out the oil and sold it to Americans, and then they actually got all the money and kept it in America, Russia would still stay poor. It will be like, see Nigeria, for example, like most of those oil-rich countries, the countries that they claim have the oil curse, right? So what Putin does is he says, we'll legitimize Russia, and this means few people are going to get losses. And the guy who writes that book, Red Notice, starts going after companies that are cooking their books, companies that are trying to resolve their shares, companies that are trying to cheat Western investors. And for a long time, he's making a significant amount of money as Russia legitimizes.
True.
Right? But then Putin now becomes confident that the economy is stable and robust enough. Yeah, it's too big to fail. And now, the guns stand on the guy.
Yeah. So for me, in my opinion, it's enough for the case of the Russian economy. I've read about how Abramovich was once an oligarch.
Yeah.
You get how they brought...
Is that still an oligarch?
It is, because they control a significant amount of power and money in the country. And how they brought Putin into power.
Yeah.
All that fiasco. So, for me, I think wealth should be equitably distributed across. Yeah. But that is not the ideal world.
No, actually, I don't think
that is not the ideal world.
No,
the real world is, we cannot have an equitable distribution of income. We always have people at the bottom and those at the top of the hierarchy.
You did economics, right?
Yes, I did.
What general theory they teach you guys? I know there's are you familiar with the Austrian school of economics? No. Are you familiar with Keynesian?
Yeah, Keynesian.
Yeah, the general theory of employment, blah, 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 that shit. So, they're not opposites. So, okay, there are two ways to look at this, right? To look at it from the Marxist perspective, which I think is, for me, I personally think is stupid. It's beautiful to read, but it's just not practical, even in a family, right? You can look at the Marxist perspective, right? Central control, almost pure equality, and all that. You can look at the Austrian school, which is sort of the direct opposite of Marx, where it's totally free market, right? I trade to you, we agree on a price, we sell. It doesn't matter what, we can sort of form cartels, it's a free market, there is no government intervention. Right, and then you look at the Keynesian.
That is my whole perspective. You see, for that to happen, that is not the real world. That is the ideal world. Government intervention is a must in every state. Be it in the US, there is no business that has no government intervention, and that is why you see that you can want to set up maybe an oil refinery. But you cannot do it without the help of a government.
So my point here was the reason for that, and that's a good example you made. Yeah, the reason why the Austrian school perspective fails is it does not anticipate violence, right? Okay. And so right now, governments they're in this beautiful position where they have a monopoly on legal violence, right? So of course you can kill me if you wanted, but it wouldn't be legal, right? It would still be illegal to do that, right? But you can do it. But the government can kill you. They just kill you and it's legal. No one investigates because they have that monopoly, right?
Yeah.
And what the violence did for them, what that monopoly on violence did for them is it helped them. You can employ violence in a good way, right? You keep security here by threatening that whoever comes to steal will shoot them, right? That's legal violence, right? but you can also use the violence, get the guns that were supposed to kill the thief to go and steal from your neighbor, right? Yeah. And so the governments did that. People who are in power, and this Putin example is good, right? Putin uses violence to stabilize the Russian economy. Yes. And when the economy is stable enough, he uses that same violence to now steal of a Hermitage capital, whatever the capital thing in that book was, right? He uses the same violence to do that, right? Which is the same thing that is happening. So you can't have an entirely free market because, again, violence is not freely distributed, right? True. So in a world where we've innovated in violence, right? So I know mass extinction, we've reached the peak. You know, there are now nuclear weapons and we know we can take ourselves off the planet if we want, right? But in a world where I don't know how this works, but, I'm sure in the future, these are going to be the biggest problems for the future, right? In a world where violence is equally distributed, right? Where if you come to steal from me, I've set up enough controls as an individual to kill you before you can steal from me. I've set up enough controls to protect myself. Yeah. But I also, if I wanted to mobilize to rise up against the government, I can mobilize enough violence, without a lot of hardship to raise against the government. Yeah. And so what you have is a government that doesn't steal from people, right? Because again, what we have, for example, in Uganda is hardly a popular government, right? What we have is a government that is backed strongly by violence, and I think it's not just Uganda. You look at the US, for example, you look at, I think maybe Scandinavia, you could say they're semi-popular governments, it's democratic.
Switzerland.
Yeah, but a significant amount of countries in the world, the power is held by violence. And that is why, even right now, you see China investing a lot in their military, the US investing way more than any other country in their military and things like that, because violence is sort of the only form of true
equalizer.
Power. Yeah, it's the only form of true power, right? But when you come now to the market, me and you, we deal every day. So market forces affect me. If the price of sugar went up, that would affect me directly, right? True. But if the price of the AK-47 went up, I don't really care about that, right? We have a market that affects us, right? Of day-to-day commodities where I can interact with you. And during that process where we interact on things that don't interfere at all, that don't have any element of violence in them, we can go with the Austrian school, right? It's a more predictive theory of how, it's not a theory, it's sort of their ways of looking at economics is more predictive of how the markets work, right? Entirely free markets. That's why Bitcoin, for example, that doesn't do anything at all, is selling at 40,000 today. It's because there is demand for it, and someone is willing to pay 40,000 for it, and someone else is not willing to sell it at 30,000, right?
That's true. But again, Kenneth, the biggest point should be, I think, how does the population try to take advantage of the violence that the government is trying to impose on us? Is it possible? It's not. Yeah, so my opinion going forward, as you say, free market economy, where the market forces of demand and supply control price, how are we going to be able to leverage the price that is at the market cap, at the equilibrium, to make sure that we at least get something? You get?
What do you mean by that?
Actually, what I'm trying to say, the market forces of demand and supply.
Yeah.
Once the market forces of demand and supply at equilibrium, that means we cannot set the price above or below.
So that is John Nash. So I also don't, again, the kind of, okay, maybe go on. I'll just
we cannot, if you have to go to the price ceiling or the price floor, it's not in our favor.
Yeah.
You get? So we always try to get something that works for everyone, so that we can have an equal distribution of the market.
Yeah, but
demand and supply can never be the same.
So what the guys from the Austrian school argue, this is I read the Ludwig von Mises book. It's called Human Action. And what he's arguing is what intervention, this kind of stuff of say protectionism, where you tax Chinese products more than local products because you want people to buy local products, things like that. In the end, what that does is distort the free market, bailing out, for example, what happened in the US, where, when the when Wall Street fell, when there was a crash, when there was a major crash, the US had to get money from taxpayers to bail these the firms out so that US can keep a strong economy. That works today because again the idea of America is more important than any American having sugar on their dining table, right? It's okay for everyone to be stolen from, so America can keep that illusion that, so the rest of us can think that America is the biggest economy in the world. Yeah, it's okay for them to steal from every American. It's more important. It's the fair thing about, I earn my money, don't tax it, don't use my tax money to bail out AIG. That doesn't make sense in America because, again, the people who hold the violence believe that this idea they call America is more important than you having to, treat your kid or something, or having, it was the housing crash, so you having to have a place to sleep, you one individual American. And so what, again, von Mises argues in the book is that kind of interventionism is anti-capitalist. So the book is very, very hardcore capitalist, and it's trying to prove that it's very, very convincing also. It's quite an easy read.
I see the whole point you're trying to make. The issue of bailouts, for me, in my opinion, does not apply for the Ugandan, because I've seen many bailout options. I've seen Emyoga is a bailout option for young people, SACCOs, microfinance support center. Has it dished out that money? NBS did an investigation on that Emyoga fund, and about 5,000 SMEs never got that money. Why? Because the government was in election period. It was trying to dish out money without these Emyogas trying to satisfy the requirements for them to get that money. Where does that leave the economy? Money is concentrated in hands of a few people. How do we distribute it? Should be the biggest question that we need to tackle. I've seen the government also tackling poverty through those presidential initiatives. It doesn't work. What should work is, let us put money in private firms that will be able to ascertain the eligibility. Most of these businesses are not credit worthy. Most of them are not credit worthy. And where does that leave the government? Hold the money. Put businesses in incubators. Government has the capacity to actually put incubators.
So where is the government getting money from? That's also, from your opinion, where is the government getting that money from?
This is taxpayers' money. Most of it.
So you know the number specifically. You know how much Ugandans pay in tax?
We are trying to reach a 6 trillion gap by next financial year, according to projections from the URA.
Okay.
I don't know if we shall be able. That's why you're seeing many taxes being put on Ugandans. Now
you know the percentage of Ugandans who actually pay tax?
Very little.
Yeah, exactly. So again, the question of where does the money come from?
That's why I'm telling you, money is held in the hands of a few individuals.
Okay.
That is the whole point.
Okay.
The biggest question we should be asking ourselves is, how does money get to all branches of the economy?
Yeah.
So that Museveni is always thinking about the money economy. In your own opinion, do you think it's ideal? Do you think it has become real? So, how can you have a money economy when all these market forces of supply and demand are just... So it becomes a very hard question to answer. From
my perspective, this is, I think, the world. Okay, let's say Uganda, right? This is, I think, Uganda was working. And I wanted to compare for you Putin's approach, where we went on this detour. I wanted to compare for you Putin's approach and, using that story that I read in the Red Notice. So it's probably one biased a little bit, but Putin's approach from Xi Jinping and say maybe the Chinese guy, Chairman Mao, for example. Yeah? Not Chairman Mao. Let's say Xi Jinping, right?
Okay.
So Xi Jinping opens up, right? Is it Xi Jinping? I don't know. Those guys' names are very hard to pronounce for me. But the guy who comes before Xi Jinping, right? They make these deals with, I think, Kissinger and whatever. They open up China, for capitalism, the Chinese version, apparently, right? Because China was also very Marxist. They open up China, and what they do, right, is they put structures in place. Yeah, even if they centralize power in their party, that CCP party, they put structures in place where China, the idea, is the most important metric. right? So today, you can steal money. Like IMF can give us money, you steal it and go and build a thing in what? In Russia. You can build, not Russia, maybe in Switzerland. You can build an apartment in Switzerland. And you steal from Ugandans in a way that the Ugandans can't make money back, right? It's okay to steal, and this was, I think, Aruo's argument as well. It's okay to, it's not okay, but it's better to steal IMF money and you build a hospital where you make profit, but you still treat Ugandans, right? That's, I mean, stealing, but it's the better version of the devil, right?
Okay.
So what Xi Jinping does, he says, first of all, we are going to fight corruption. We are going to make sure we build China. We have the biggest market because we have the biggest number of people. We are going to make sure we close a little bit. The things that can come from China, we'll make sure it's hard to import them. So we are going to put a high tax on importing American stuff, for example, right? But we are going to sell our stuff so cheaply, and also the money thing. They play the money valuation. So the Chinese currency as well it buys, rather the dollar buys a lot of Chinese money, so that again, things are cheaper from China. It's what? It's better for Chinese people to export. Yeah. So they do all these economic tricks, and what comes out today is the Chinese success story where 800 million people have been risen from extreme poverty, right? And sort of like, this is, I think, in our lifetime, that would happen again, right? But the consequence of that is, again, because of this, you said authoritarian, because of the two approaches of authoritarian, right? There's the Russian way, where we have a mediocre economy, but people are basically living scared, but they can hide. Yeah. And then you have the Chinese version, where people are only scared of the government. You can't say anything against the government, but you're not very scared of thieves or gangs, because if someone steals from you, the government is extremely efficient. They probably will find them. But that means also you cannot take separately. You can't have a separate thought. You're in that Orwellian 1984 situation where your thoughts are being monitored, right? So you have a country of a very, very prosperous country, economically prosperous country, but it doesn't have free people, right? It has sort of minions, these people who are held by this iron fist of the government, right? They are safe and they have everything. I mean, they're not worried. In China, they're not very worried, and they managed actually to fight this COVID thing, even if it started from there, because of their authoritarian nature, right? And then you have Russia, which I think Russia is more similar to Uganda, where everything is mediocre. You want to start a small gang here, steal a few, as long as you don't steal from the wrong person. If you steal from an oligarch's son, who knows the oligarch, then they'll kill your gang, right? But if you find your gang and you steal from usually your guys, you can also survive with your mini cartel within Russia, right? You start your own hacking thing. As long as you're hacking American companies, you can collect your bitcoins and exchange them in Russia for dollars, and have your criminal enterprise around, right? And actually, if your criminal enterprise is ideological aligned to the Russian way, the government can even indirectly fund you to help you, Russia, North Korea. The government indirectly sponsors the cyber criminals to help them infiltrate like the West more, right? It's part of, so there's that. And it's very similar to what we have here as well. Here today, the police guy can start his own thing where he puts a roadblock, like here in Chanja. Guys can put a roadblock on this ring road where it isn't supposed to be, just because they want to collect, right? That you couldn't do in China, right? Because in China now, that is people would report you, and it would be easy for the government to penalize you. But if you found those guys and you didn't pay them and reported, or you paid them and reported them, nothing's going to happen. There's no one to report to. The economy is mediocre, but also you have freedom. If you're very creative and if you're willing to take risks, you can start your own gang and steal from people and steal, the border guy. There's a video that moved of border guys who stole from the Indian, right? There's that freedom, right? But again, freedom you can use in the right way. You can use it obviously to steal, but you can use it to innovate, right? If you came up with an idea of how to make deals, to sell gold or whatever, I think that's what Ugandans are doing very much now.
Now, Kenneth, do you know, I know you've heard of the deep state.
Deep state, yeah.
Yes.
I've heard of the deep state.
Do you think something like that is happening? Because for me, in my opinion, we're in a deep state. Why do you think the president's brother is camping
There's a video where this guy was dissing Bobby Wine. It's a very disturbing video to watch for people who like Bobby Wine. So Katolwama was making the distinction very clear. Museveni is the political wing of the NRM. Saleh is the business wing, right?
Exactly.
And but it has been very. If you read Kalinachi's book, when I think Saleh was in the deal to steal. Well, that's what the book claims. I don't know. When Saleh was in the deal to steal, to bring fake choppers from Belarus, I think. Saleh was in the deal to bring fake choppers from Belarus. And, basically was by the time over the commissioner, he was the guy who was supposed to catch him, and then things just went south from there for him, right? If you read that book, then like, accumulating wealth has been part of the big strategy of holding power. It's one thing to have the violence, but it's also a better thing to have the money, so you can take the approach of carrot stick, right? So you first give the guy the carrot, you first give the horse the carrot, and if it can work with the carrot, if you can do whatever you want while giving it a carrot, that's fine. But if it refuses, then you whip, right? So that's sort of the approach they've taken. Violence is the last resort. Yes. But now that they control most of the wealth, it is, and I think that also becomes hard for creativity a little bit, because if, for example, if we are able to scale this up, if we are able to pitch this to white people and they give us a significant amount of money to scale this up, the way we expect our vision to be, we are going to start getting deterred by political reasons, because, unless of course we take the carrot, right? If Saleh says, hey, you guys have raised $2 million, you take my $500,000 well for this stake so that I can tell you what to say on your podcast. If we turn it down, then it's down the road from there.
Yes. Yeah. So Kenneth, that is the whole point of the deep state. That is the bigger picture. We cannot have control. We as ordinary citizens, the only way we can have control is to check the government. How? Uprisings. But the state like Uganda cannot support uprisings.
How so?
We do not have the capacity to.
What is the capacity to? You tell me the capacity. We do not have start looking for it.
First of all, we do not have the Ken, we do not have the guns. How are we going to get the guns?
Yeah, but again, if you
an uprising,
today's uprisings, it is very,
and we are very fearful as Ugandans.
So
that is the biggest factor.
I know that. I don't think we are any more fearful than any other country. But again, if you want to read the history of how people have risen in the modern times, right, where the force of violence against them has been overwhelming.
Maybe just to cut you short, let's just look at the example of doctors. Doctors tried to revolt against the government. What did they end?
Okay, so
that is the whole point.
Yeah.
We Ugandans, we do not have the capacity in form of strength, in form of equipment, and also we are not mentally ready to take on the government.
Okay, so mentally ready. I agree with that, and I'll tell you why. Gandhi in India, right, started that new movement, the thing that Mandela copied, the thing that Martin Luther copied of non-violent resistance, right? And the reason why people call it successful, right, is because it actually got things to change, right? But also the other reason why it was successful is Gandhi exploited the core of humanity, right? Right now, if I took up a gun, if I took up 3 guns, and I went against the government will bomb me with a what? A bazooka, right? It is excessive compared to my to kind of violence I was putting against it, but people will be okay with that because I implied that I'm ready for violent what? A violent violent aggression. I was ready to go violently. But if what basically I think we'll try to do is walk to work. If I choose to motivate civil disobedience or mobilize people to do anything other than violence, so I think what Bobby Wine is also overemphasizing, if I choose to go non-violently, and say rise up or whatever I decide to do, then the government obviously is going to first use violence, but that violence will be measured as a form of intimidation. You know what they did in November, where they really shot in Ugandans. They wouldn't have done that for a whole week. That is my assumption. That was measured violence as a form of intimidation, right?
This government has no shame. Look at what happened in Libya. Look at what happened in Chad.
What happened in
Look at what happened in Angola.
First,
The governments do not care about the citizens.
But that's the thing is, when you do what happens in
My
Libya,
whole point, Kenneth, is we Ugandans cannot sustain an uprising.
That is for yourself. Again, don't. Ugandans are very diverse. It's very hard to represent.
You've seen it. Okay.
No, but the argument is Ugandans are okay.
Let us take a random sample of Kampala. Random sample of Kampala. 2006 elections, Kizza Besigye against the government.
Yeah.
It lasted how many days? About 6 days. The next week, the streets were empty.
Yeah.
Lot of killings, lot of businesses destroyed, and that is what happened. Once that happened in Libya, once the citizens tried to rise against Gaddafi, what happened? Death.
But
actually, what happened in Libya is actually a typical example of what I'm trying to say, that we cannot sustain an uprising.
But that is how you misunderstand this thing. The reason why Ugandan form of, if you compare, for example, NRA thing took 5 years, Besigye's thing took 6 days, the thing, Bobby Wine's thing took 2 days. Yeah, the reason why the amount of time we spend protesting reduces is not because Museveni increases violence and increases more violence. It's because now Museveni is a better politician. Yeah, he will get, after the 6 days, he will start looking for the ringleaders and offer the carrot, right? If they don't take the carrot, he will obviously offer the whip. He'll bring out the stick, right? But most people are just humans, right? They'll follow Bobby Wine. This guy, what's the name of that chick who named her son Museveni? Full figure. Yeah. Most people will follow Bobby Wine until something better comes along. And Museveni knows this because it's a human thing, right? And Museveni knows he's a better politician. And again, I think he's one of the most egoless leaders. He's willing to do the most embarrassing shit to stay in power, right? He just doesn't have an ego at all. So he's willing to, ally with full figure. He's willing to kill some people on the side. He's willing to, that is his approach, basically. He's just a very good politician. Right? So the next uprising, so for example, this thing that happened where they shot people in Kampala, he managed to manage that, right? Because again, his interest is making sure that the Americans don't say too much, making sure the Europeans don't call him a dictator too much. And as soon as that is well managed, what he's doing inside Uganda is looking for those ringleaders. He'll do what he did to Bobby Wine's kids. If he can't, or if you're very inferior, as a form of intimidation, he'll take people to CMI and intimidate them and pull out their nails and do all that stuff. So he can do that. Alternatively, he will find some ringleaders and try to buy them. I think there were rumors also passing that the majority of NUP MPs in Kampala were already bought by Sevo. So he's capable of doing that. He will identify people who are bribable, people who needs to use as an example, and then people who cannot be bribed, who just need to die, basically, right? And he will do all that in a measured way to make sure that the next time the uprising is smaller. Right? The only way to pull off something that like Gandhi pulled off is, again, most people have been saying this, ideology, right? People cannot follow a person in the age of Twitter. Yeah? The reason why the Gandhis, or even Besigye, the reasons why the Besigyes were very popular is because we got all news from the same radio stations. There was no Twitter in 2006, right? We got all news from the same radio stations, right? And the radio station couldn't bring me to debate Besigye. Even right now, Besigye goes alone on TV. Have you ever seen Besigye on TV with the panelist?
He goes alone.
He goes alone with the presenter, right? I don't go on TV to debate Besigye. I don't go on TV to debate Museveni. So it's Museveni and Besigye having a one-on-one conversation, and I pick a side, of the two, right? But now on Twitter, I don't have to go on TV to insult Besigye. Yeah, I just go on Twitter. I'm like, Besigye, you're a fake guy, right? Same thing, I go on Twitter to say, hey, you're a fake guy. That is like the way it's distributed. The only way to get me to follow you is speech to me, which is the thing that has been lacking in Ugandans. And this is the thing where I think Bobby Wine's thing is also very stagnant at the moment. They don't have that ideology that moves Ugandans. And the reason that is not there is Museveni has mastered the colonial divide and conquer so much that the problem in Buganda is not the problem in Mbale. It's not the problem in Mbarara. To get a uniform ideology for Uganda as a country, that takes real genius Einstein shit, right? I don't think it's possible, in my opinion, right? And so it's going to be hard to aim for revolution in Uganda, what is the alternative? The alternative is reform, right? If you're in parliament, you can suggest systems that reduce corruption instead of what Segini is doing, right? I mean, again, I applaud him. I think it's very commendable what he's doing, but I think that is not as good as, if invested in hiring people who could suggest alternative systems, right? Say, for example, this is the problem we have with corruption, and this is because it's transparent. Let us pass a private member's bill to make things more transparent, things like that, yeah, to increase the punishment. And these things are going to be shot down. These bills may not pass, but Ugandans will start coming up with ideas of how to solve their problems. What you're basically doing when you present these bills to parliament is pitching to Ugandans that this is a problem, this is a very, very specific problem, there's a very, very specific solution, right? And so you're going to find one kid maybe 5 years later, John Katumba, who will be like, you know what? I remember this guy was suggesting transparency. That's going to be the reason I ran for president, right? This is what Kableta was running with economic transformation.
Financial inclusion, something like that.
Yeah, something like that, which is just a small policy. If you're going to run a country, that is just one half of a policy to run a country.
Now let me just run you through maybe the dealings of parliament. Yeah. Maybe from the top organ down.
Yeah.
You see, parliament works as a government entity. Civil servants. It's not an independent parliament for the case of Uganda. Yeah. That's why you see the newly appointed clerk is a guy that has been with Museveni in the bush.
Yeah.
Why? It's all about interest. Why do you think teachers and doctors are not paid well? I've seen people saying 200 million in a pandemic like this is not worth it to the MPs. I disagree. That is the entitlement. You know why? Where were we to scrutinize such a decision in the previous parliament?
Yeah.
The 200 million only came in a situation where there was what? An uncertainty, which is what? The pandemic, COVID-19.
Yeah.
What was right to be done? Here is my opinion. I think what Museveni is trying to do is try to buy power.
Yeah, I think
once you influence parliament, you have everything you need to operate a country. Policies are passed. This NUP has very good policies. I've seen the policy document of NUP. They have very good, suggestive, and inclusive policies. But government cannot take them on. They are the minority in parliament.
Yeah.
Once those policies are debated in parliament, they can't be passed.
Yeah. So the idea is not to influence government to do anything. The idea again is to pitch to Ugandans, right? To put the government in opposition. Yeah, and the way you do this is get a popular thing that the government won't allow, right? Get a popular bill like open up the ministry books, right? Ugandans have to know how tenders come in and how tenders go out and all that. And think about it, invest money. What Segirinya is doing, that say 1 billion is spending in Kawempe North. Invest it in hiring experts to write this out as a policy. Yeah, a very clear policy. Let me say this, right? Put it on the floor of parliament. It won't pass. It will not pass, yeah? But promote it. Again, you're allowed to do this as an MP, right?
Yes, that's true.
Run around Uganda promoting and what they call consultations, promoting this bill, right? It won't pass. But when it doesn't pass, people are going to hate the government. The government is going to become what? Opposition to the people because it knows. Let them do another thing like that. At some point, when people rise up, Museveni does what? He concedes. Of course, he's not going to allow everything, but he'll concede. This is what happened to multipartyism. Yeah? People put it up, the government says no, was it called the NRM? By that time it was the movement, the one party, NSC, something like that. It says no, but the Ugandans are being pitched to. Yeah? Then they bring it back, it says no, but the Ugandans are being pitched to. Until Museveni has something to get in return. He's like, since you guys want multipartyism, I'll give it to you. We'll do quid pro quo with what? Lifting term limits, right? And then the Ugandans get multipartyism. If they do the same thing, I think Baganda tried to do the same thing with federal. But federal fails because federal was not universally Ugandan, right? It was mostly a Uganda thing. Yeah, but federal also did the same thing. They come and pitch it knowing that no one is going to pass this in parliament, right? But then we can pitch it to the Ugandans. So Ugandans are aware of this. And I know right now that talk isn't happening again because the politicians gave up on that. But the Kenu Chamses, the Nambos, as I think at that time they were.
I have a very typical example of what you're trying to say. I remember there was the previous MPs, there was an MP that he had the thing of agriculture, a policy on a very good agriculture policy. What he did is put the policy on the floor of parliament, debated, but was not passed.
Yeah.
What the government did was to adapt part of it. But how can you say that the opposition leaders can try to pitch Ugandans? Where do we pitch them to? We don't have the platform. You've seen that radio, TVs are very wary of hosting politicians. That is the best avenue.
But that's the thing. Ugandans doesn't mean all the 40 million people in Uganda. Ugandan means the people who are willing to pay attention to this political shit. If the majority of the political leader, the opinion leaders agree that transparency is the right move, right? You're pitching to Ugandans. Those are the people who mobilize. When you see uprisings, it's very, very rare. And I don't know how the Tunisia thing happens. It's mostly CIA anyway.
Yeah.
If you see uprisings, if it's not the CIA, then it's locals who, there are few leaders, local leaders who are actually doing the mobilization, right? Those are the people whose mind you care about. It's not like the 40 million. Now, why do you care about Mark's opinion, for example? Okay, no, you do. Yeah, but I see. but you get my point, right? You get my point, and I think we have to wrap up at some point because we are doing too much time. But the point is still, if you want to change, right? The revolution is hard. It's going to be hard right now because Uganda is too divided, and it's going to be Museveni's goal to emphasize these divisions. This is what the colonialists did. This is what, this divide and conquer has been very successful since the Romans, right? Since I think that was Julius Caesar. Since Julius Caesar, this has been very, very perfect way of ruling over masses of people. Yeah? And Museveni is doing it, and he's going to keep doing it, until maybe we reach a brink of like genocide, maybe. I don't know if that will reach, but if we don't reach that place, he will keep that balance there, and we'll stay divided. No one will come up with a thing that helps all Ugandans universally. But reform, on the other hand, pushes people. And, I was having a conversation with one friend of mine about this thing. When the Constitutional Court decided that the first ruling that came out, when the Constitutional Court decided that the DC in the army cannot be a court for Ugandans. Ugandans did not give it any power, right? So I was very happy, and this guy was like, you guys are just playing with Sevo, now the election is over, it's not important. And I was like, yeah, that's fine, I agree with that. They needed to keep people in the army and torture them because they wanted to get power. But now that the Constitutional Court has made it clear, Sevo won't do it another time. So if he has to do something like that another time, either he's going to come out and do stuff illegally, the way he shot people in Kampala, which obviously that is a negative for him. It taints him, going for, because again, history doesn't forget, especially today. Today, 100 years from now, you know how, like, you can't, if you're related to Hitler, you have to change your last name. Yeah? 10 years from now, if you're related to Museveni,
you have to change your name.
Yeah, you have to change your name. Maybe not 10 years. 10 years is too soon, right? But, years to come, when we are old people, that is because of, again, the history is leaving behind, right? It's very, very short-sighted. When the way reform happens is something small happens by another, it's progress, like one step at a time, right? And in this time I mean political reform, right? Where Ugandans get a little bit more insight into how they are being governed, a little bit more decision making, for example, lobby for local governments to come back, things like that, slowly by slowly, take away RDCs and things like that. There are few things that can be done, that can be lobbied for by opposition MPs. There are about less than 100 opposition MPs to pitch to Ugandans to actually realize that, hey, we are being conned. This is not about Nalete Dembe. It's not about that. There are few things that we can keep peace. You can keep your Dembe and still do for Ugandans and make Ugandan governance a little bit better. And that is the approach that is more feasible than a revolution.
Okay, Ken, I get the whole point. Reforms. But it's not possible.
Yeah, I mean...
You know why? First of all, as I've always told you, that we do not have the capacity. Capacity is the biggest issue here, all over Uganda. Because you cannot try to change a government with less than 100 people in parliament influencing policies. What needs to be done? Pitching, as you say. How are we going to pitch? As you said, 40 million people, you do not need to pitch to over 40 million people in the whole country. That is not the essence of politics. Once you get into politics, you lose your dignity. You must be able to, first of all, you draw resentment. Once you draw resentment, hatred. People at the top are always willing to eliminate you. And that is the biggest problem that we have with the Ugandan legislators. Someone cannot table a bill because he knows his family is being threatened. Look at Nabanja. How many people are coming against Nabanja? Someone went to her brothers. No, I'm just giving you.
Yeah, focus on like the structure of opposition right now.
Still, okay. That is the whole point. I'm just giving an overview. Someone goes to Nabanja. That is still within government. I see. Someone goes into the village of Nabanja and tells the brother, tell your sister to what? Stay off these contracts.
Yeah.
If that happens in the government, in the ruling government, how do you think an opposition member of parliament can react?
No, I agree. So here's the thing, right? So I fully agree with you, right? When it comes, this happens in the US. This happens I'm sure it happens in Scandinavia, right? Where people who have interests use intimidation as a form of what? Getting their policies passed, right? This happens and, getting contracts and all that, doing their business. I have a problem with that, but that is not a problem. That is not the Uganda's problem, right? I don't care if, say, Salim Saleh and the First Family, they take all the contracts in the country. I don't care if they can actually deliver, right? The problem will come in from actually delivering, right? And even if it happened, it means because they're not engineers. They have to hire Ugandans, yeah? And the thing you have to understand about being an employed Ugandan, a Ugandan who has, say, 100 million in savings on your account, is you start to think about the bigger picture, right? So an economy alone that is good, this is the problem that Hong Kong has, right? Hong Kong has that separate ideology, but also has very empowered people because everyone's educated and everyone is employed, right? The thing about, one of the first family members taking all the profit, that is one thing, that is one problem that can be solved after the Ugandans who are working for them have the opportunity now to say, you know what, we are going to even boycott the thing after the contract has been given, and Ugandans have set a standard that doesn't matter who takes the contract as long as you do the work. Then all the employees say, for us, we won't work anymore because we don't agree with, your political position. And this is happening in the US right now with Black Lives Matter, right? And when we get to that place, we can start making things fairer. Today, our problem is getting involved, being involved, what inclusive politics, what NUP is speaking, right? Being involved, making sure that if a decision is going to be made in charge, I know, right? And usually the way you could do that is your chairman would come and tell you, today they will be digging this road, so don't drive, yeah? But now they're not, the chairman are there, but no one knows them, right? They are sort of Museveni placeholders, spies from Museveni in the villages, right? But if local government is back, then I can go and tell my chairman that, hey, I don't like that road. And chairman will tell me, but that is part of the subcommittee. Then I mobilize people from my village. Then we go to the sub-county and the Gomboland say, we don't like this. And the Gombola says that's a district plan. And then we mobilize people from that sub-county, go to the district and say, we don't like this. And this says that's a national plan. Then we mobilize as a district and say, we don't like this. And either we vote out our MPO, like the way we put our positions. And if we can mobilize other districts, then the country obviously is made of districts, right? That
maybe to cut you short, this has been happening all over time. Organizing people in small groups to oppose a policy. But at the end of the day, the government intervention comes in.
No, but things work. That's also the other thing, by the way. People think that...
I'll give you a typical example of my home district.
Yeah.
I remember there were border guys that tried to say that they don't want an NRM MP.
Yeah, that's a stupid thing to ask for.
You know why? There are very many circumstances that led to that assumption, to that conclusion. Poor service delivery, corruption, stuff like that. A certain part of the district was turned into a small part of an industrial zone. But who are the people who were taking these contracts? There are no open tenders. District boards do not provide evidence. So these guys, what they did, they tried to revolt. They came up, organized themselves in small groups, and took on the government, the local government at the time. Information reached Kampala. The next day, police is being deployed. Trucks are being taken to Kumi. And everything stopped at that.
I don't think you understand. You get my perspective. So here's the thing, right? If I vote a chairman, right, who represents me as the leader of my village,
yes,
right?
Yes, I get.
Then because he's just a leader, we can sit as a village committee and talk about issues that we don't want in the village, right? It could be we don't want the northern bypass to pass in our village, yeah? Or to pass on this wetland or whatever, it could be that reason, which is something planned at the national scale, right?
Yeah.
So the chairman, when he goes to the chairman committee, he will say, in my village, this is what's happening, right? If that is affecting more than one villages in that sub-county, yeah, then those chairmen can say, okay, I think it's unanimous. We don't want this to pass in our sub-county, right? This is a bigger geographical region, right? Then the sub-counties can sit at maybe, I don't know like the hierarchy, but maybe parish, maybe district, right? They can sit at the next hierarchy and say, we don't want this thing to pass in the district because it has this major impact that we hate, right? I'm just giving a very hypothetical example, right? And this is not people standing up because they can be intimidated. These are actual leaders, right? And if the chairman goes and says, you know what, guys, that has jammed, then just know you don't have a vote next time, right?
Sure.
Or, obviously politics, you have to do more good things than bad things if people actually vote for you, right? But what, again, the current regime did is to take that power away, right? So now we have like very mediocre chairmen who write on things who are basically spies of the government. They don't
these
do anything.
people are not actually there by they're just having titles.
Exactly. But again, if some guy from Bobby Wine's camp or from FDC's camp went and pitched, if it is a well thought out policy, we're very well thought out, pitch it, put it on the internet for people who are interested to read and say, this is what we think the local government should be, and this is our proposition, right? The government will say, no, fine. And then all you do is do consultation. You delay it, obviously. You don't debate it on the first day. You delay it. While you're consultating, you're buying ads on TV, you're buying ads on YouTube, you're, hiring influencers to spread the word, all that stuff, so people know. So, if it's a good thing, people tend to align to it. They were like, hey, actually, this is a good idea, right? And then the government shoots it down, but that is an unpopular position the government is taking. And again, obviously, whatever you say, there is no government in this world that is unpopular, fully unpopular.
True.
At some point, the government has mobilized enough popular people to keep it there, enough, a significant amount of people to keep it there. That is just the way things work. And the only way to reform the government is not to revolve. Again, most of what revolutions are, for me, in my opinion, they are mostly motivated by envy. We sit here, we see Saleh, the man is living the good life, and I'm like, hey, why is this man living a good life and I'm not?
True.
And that sort of motivates me to what? To take on the man, yeah? But if you're willing to stop being petty, if you're willing to look beyond that and be like, how can we make this Uganda better? Then you think of like different ways other than, let me fight Saleh, let me fight Museveni, let me fight who. How do we actually create, how do you think of actual policies? What would an ideal world be? The thing Marx wrote, the Communism Manifesto.
Yeah.
What would an ideal world be of equals, right? And you lay it down and let people, because that, I think the communism thing led to the majority of revolutions in our history. Let people debate what future they prefer, communism or capitalism. It doesn't have to be those two. Here in Uganda,
for the case of Uganda, it's a very hard
concept. Exactly, it's hard, but again, when Marx...
But what I would tell people, we have to try what we have to do.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Right now, we are in limbo. Because we wait for the kids to grow up.
Yeah, everything we're trying to do looks to be taken short. Everything we're trying to make tries to be taken short because of the things that are happening in the country. You cannot tell me you're a very good medic and you're going to serve the Ugandan government, maybe in a government hospital. Most of our medics are not in the country, the best professionals. My uncle is a cardiologist, worked in Uganda, but the circumstances do not offer him the right remuneration. The rewarding system is not the best. What did he opt? He's in Australia, making tons of dollars. So, the ideal world, the real world, it's up to us to create. It's just like running a business. Say maybe you're running a trading business. 10 years down the road, you're not making a profit. What options are left with you? You either withdraw or you change line of business. That is what I would employ Ugandans to do right now at this most important. We have tried small uprisings that failed. We have tried debating policies in parliament. We have failed. We are the unpopular people. Government is the majority.
By far.
Yes. So what happens next?
First of all, that means we have nothing to say. That's also the other thing people ignore is
we do not have a say in anything.
I mean,
First
I agree
of all, our speech is not liberalized. Everything that you try to say is being captured. My friend Wazia Muhima, just simple tweet.
Mm-hmm.
And government is following him around.
Yeah, but
so all these ideologies we're trying to brainstorm are the perfect example of what would move forward, but I don't think they have not been debated. They have not been brought on the table. We have nothing to do.
No, I don't try. I'm not very pessimistic like that. I still think that my idea of well-thought reform, well-thought sort of, instead of sloganeering, well-thought policies, giving Ugandans the benefit of the doubt, giving them some credit to know that they have the patience to read well-thought policies. I think that will work definitely. And I think we will just stop it here. We'll stop the conversation. And you'll definitely be invited back, and we'll
Thank you for having me, Kenneth and Mark.
Conversation about this.